Alex had always dreamed of a quiet retreat by the water, a place far removed from the constant hum of city life. So when the opportunity arose to purchase a small, rustic cabin on the edge of a sparkling lake, they did not hesitate. The drive up the winding country road had been long but scenic, with golden sunlight glinting off the water through clusters of pine and birch. Each turn brought a new view that seemed to promise serenity and inspiration. Pulling up to the cabin, Alex's heart leapt. The structure was modest, aged wood siding weathered by decades of sun and wind, a steep roof with a few missing shingles, and a porch that sagged slightly in the middle. Yet there was something undeniably charming about it. Wildflowers clung stubbornly to the edges of the lawn, and ivy crept up one corner of the cabin, weaving its way through the cracks and lending the place a sense of timelessness. Alex could already picture themselves sipping morning coffee on the porch, listening to the gentle lapping of the lake, the mist curling off the water in the early hours. Alex stepped out of the car, breathing in the crisp air tinged with pine and fresh water. The silence was almost tangible, broken only by the occasional call of a distant loon or the rustle of leaves. For a moment, they allowed themselves to simply stand there, letting the reality sink in. This was theirs now, their cabin, their project, their escape. As they approached the front steps, Alex's excitement grew. There were repairs to plan, ideas to sketch, and possibilities to explore. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of cedar and old wood. Dust motes floated in the streams of sunlight that poured through the uneven windows. The floors creaked underfoot, but Alex welcomed every sound. It was a reminder of the cabin's history and potential. They began mentally walking through the space, where the kitchen could be modernized, how the living area could be cozy yet open, and what kind of furnishings would complement the natural surroundings. Yet amid the sense of possibility, there was a subtle unease. Along the edge of the property and near the lake, small signs with crisp lettering caught Alex's eye. They read, "Community rules enforced, property access subject to guidelines." Alex paused, studying them. They had known there was a homeowners association for the area, but these signs felt more authoritative than expected. Still, Alex shook off the worry. Surely this would be simple. They had purchased the cabin legally, and renovations were part of their plan. Nothing could be complicated about that, right? The first hours were spent walking the property line, imagining where the garden could go and which trees might need pruning. Alex took out a notebook, jotting down measurements, ideas, and lists of supplies. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting warm gold across the water, and Alex felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This cabin was a blank canvas, and they were ready to start creating. As evening approached, Alex paused on the porch, gazing at the lake shimmering in the fading light. The gentle waves lapped against the shore, reflecting pinks and oranges across the water. A cool breeze brushed against their face, carrying the scent of water and pine. For a moment, all seemed right in the world. The city and its noise felt impossibly far away, replaced by the promise of peace, solitude, and creativity. And then came the first sound that disrupted the tranquility, a low rumble of a vehicle approaching from the road behind the cabin. Alex turned, curious, as a dark SUV slowly made its way down the driveway. It was marked with a discreet emblem that, while small, was unmistakable, the Homeowners Association. Their hearts sank slightly as the vehicle came to a stop. Out stepped two security officers, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the property. Alex felt a sudden tension they had not anticipated. "Good evening," one of the officers called, walking briskly toward Alex. "We need to discuss access to this property." Alex blinked, unsure if they had heard correctly. I own this cabin," they replied cautiously. "I just purchased it and plan to start renovations." The officer gave a polite but firm nod. "We understand, but there are procedures that must be followed before any work can take place. We'll need you to step aside for now until it's reviewed." Alex felt a jolt of disbelief. Step aside? On their own property? The sense of excitement that had filled the day now mingled with a prickling anxiety. As the sun sank fully behind the trees, casting long shadows across the lawn, Alex realized that their dream retreat might not be as simple as they had imagined. This cabin, quiet and inviting, had already presented its first challenge, one that promised a battle between ownership, rules, and determination. And yet, standing there, notebook in hand, Alex made a silent vow. No matter the obstacles, they would find a way to make this cabin truly theirs. Alex's heart was still pounding when the HOA security officer stepped closer. Their calm, serene evening by the lake had vanished, replaced with a mix of confusion and irritation. The officer carried a clipboard with neatly stacked papers, a pen clipped to the top, and a posture that suggested he had done this many times before. Alex took a cautious step toward him, notebook tucked under one arm. "Good evening," the officer said again, his tone polite but firm. "I'm here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. We need to review your activities on this property before any renovations begin." Alex blinked. "Review? This is my property. I just bought it and I'm planning to start renovations. I don't understand why I need permission to be here." The officer's expression remained neutral. "We understand your position, but community guidelines require that all improvements or repairs undergo prior approval. Until that process is complete, the association requests that you refrain from starting work." Alex felt a flash of disbelief. "I'm not starting work yet," they said, trying to keep their voice even. "I'm just walking the property, taking measurements, making plans. This is my cabin, my legal property." The officer nodded again. "We're aware of ownership, but the guidelines exist to maintain uniformity and safety in the community. Please understand that we are only enforcing the rules." Alex frowned, the frustration rising inside. It was one thing to follow rules, but another entirely to be told to step aside from a place they had just legally purchased. "I understand rules," Alex said carefully, "but I'm not breaking anything. I haven't started renovations. I just want to enjoy my property and prepare for the work. Why am I being told I can't be here?" The officer paused for a moment and then gestured toward the porch. "It's not about enjoyment. It's about compliance. We need to document the property and ensure that any planned improvements are submitted and approved before access is fully granted. Until then, we ask that you remain off certain areas." Alex's mind raced. How could the association deny access to the very cabin they had purchased? It seemed absurd. "Certain areas? I can't just be told I can't be on my own property. This is where I live, and I intend to start renovations as soon as possible. I have all the documents proving ownership." The officer glanced down at his clipboard, flipping through papers without meeting Alex's eyes. "We have a record of your ownership, yes, but our procedures must still be followed. Failure to comply could result in fines or other measures according to community policies." Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady the rising tension. The serenity of the lake, the gentle sway of the trees, the golden sunlight reflecting off the water, it all felt so distant now. What had seemed like a simple, peaceful retreat was suddenly of rules, authority, and personal rights. They wondered if every neighbor had faced this kind of challenge. "Is there a way to resolve this quickly?" Alex asked, striving to keep the conversation reasonable. "I just want to start my renovations and enjoy my property without conflict." The officer nodded slightly, almost as if impressed by the calm in Alex's tone. "The process requires submitting your renovation plans for review. Once approved, you may begin. I can leave you with the forms and instructions, but until then, the association requests that you not proceed with any work." Alex felt a mix of relief and frustration. At least there was a process, but it seemed unnecessarily complicated, especially given that they had not yet started any renovations. Still, Alex understood that pushing back aggressively might make things worse. "Fine," they said, their voice firm but measured. "I'll follow the process, but I want to make it clear that I am the owner and I intend to use my property." The officer gave a polite nod, handing Alex a stack of neatly printed forms. "Complete these at your earliest convenience. Once approved, we can schedule a follow-up inspection and provide you access for renovations. Thank you for your cooperation." With that, the officer returned to the SUV parked near the edge of the property. The vehicle's tires crunched on the gravel as it drove slowly back toward the road, leaving Alex standing on the porch, notebook in hand, and a swirl of thoughts in their mind. Alex sank onto the old wooden railing, exhaling deeply. The peaceful retreat they had imagined seemed further away than ever. What had been a quiet evening by the lake had turned into an encounter with rules and procedures they had never anticipated. But despite the frustration, a spark of determination ignited within them. They were not about to be intimidated. This cabin was theirs, and they would navigate the rules, complete the renovations, and reclaim the peaceful retreat they had envisioned. As the sun dipped lower behind the lake, casting long, warm shadows across the porch, Alex opened the forms, scanning the detailed lists of requirements and restrictions. It was a lot to take in, but Alex was resolute. One step at a time, they would make this cabin their sanctuary, no matter the obstacles along the way. The next morning, Alex woke early, still shaken from the unexpected visit the previous evening. Sunlight streamed through the cabin windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the warm air. The lake glimmered beyond the trees, serene and undisturbed, as if nothing had happened. But Alex's mind was far from peaceful. The encounter with HOA security had left a lingering question. How could access to their own property be restricted, even temporarily? Determined not to let confusion and frustration take over, Alex decided to gather as much information as possible. They began by reviewing the forms the officers had left behind. The documents were meticulous, filled with paragraphs of rules, requirements, and references to community guidelines that seemed dense and at times contradictory. Some clauses seemed straightforward. A permit was required for structural changes. Certain renovations required specific approvals. Others, however, were vague, references to community aesthetic compliance, or prior approval for all exterior alterations without explaining who could decide or what the exact criteria were. Alex made a stack of notes, highlighting sections that seemed unclear or potentially problematic. They then took a laptop into the cabin's small kitchen and began researching the HOA itself. The association's website had a wealth of information, meeting minutes, policy documents, and member handbooks. As Alex scrolled through page after page, it became apparent that while some homeowners followed these rules without issue, others had struggled. Discussions in community forums hinted at disagreements, lengthy approval processes, and occasional disputes over minor changes. Curiosity mixed with concern as Alex realized they were stepping into a system that required not only patience but careful navigation. The rules were not inherently unfair, but they were structured in a way that demanded thorough compliance and documentation. Any misstep could delay renovations or lead to further interactions with security officers. To gain more perspective, Alex decided to speak directly with neighbors. They walked down the small gravel road to the nearest cabin, where an older couple and Mark were tending a flower garden. After introductions, Alex shared their recent experience and asked about life in the community. Sighed, brushing dirt from her hands. "It can be tricky at first," she said gently. "The HOA isn't unreasonable, but they're very strict. We had to get approvals for every little exterior change when we first moved in new fences, paint colors, even planting large trees." Mark nodded. "We learned the hard way to read every guideline carefully and submit requests early. Sometimes it feels like you need permission for everything, but it's mostly about keeping the community uniform. Still, don't be discouraged. Once you understand the process, it gets easier." Alex listened carefully, taking mental notes. The advice confirmed what they had suspected. Patience, knowledge, and preparation were essential. The couple even offered to share copies of the forms and approvals they had submitted over the years, providing valuable insight into what worked and what didn't. Alex felt a flicker of hope. Community knowledge could be a powerful tool. Back at the cabin, Alex spent the afternoon organizing the information gathered. They created a checklist: clarify all ambiguous rules, submit necessary documentation, keep records of interactions, and maintain a calm, professional tone in all communications. Every potential obstacle was noted, every requirement carefully cataloged. What had initially seemed like an overwhelming challenge now began to feel like a puzzle that could be solved with careful planning and diligence. As the sun dipped behind the lake that evening, casting a warm orange glow across the water, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. The cabin, with its creaky floors and overgrown garden, remained a place of promise. The rules and restrictions that had seemed so intimidating in the beginning were not walls but hurdles, steps in a process that, once understood, could be navigated successfully. Alex sat on the porch, notebook in hand, and watched the gentle waves reflect the fatting sunlight. The breeze carried the fresh scent of the lake, mingling with the earthy aroma of pine and damp soil. Despite the challenges ahead, Alex felt grounded and focused. They were no longer simply dreaming about renovations. They were planning strategically, ready to meet each requirement head-on. By the end of the day, a plan had begun to take shape. Step by step, Alex would research, document, and comply. They would follow the rules without surrendering their vision for the cabin. And in the process, they would learn not only about the HOA's procedures, but about their own resilience and determination. As darkness settled over the lake, Alex closed the notebook with a sense of quiet confidence. The journey had just begun, but one thing was certain. They were not going to let anything, even strict rules and unexpected obstacles, keep them from making this cabin their dream retreat. The following morning, Alex awoke with a sense of determination. The lake was calm, the surface smooth like glass, reflecting the pale pink and gold of dawn. It was a new day, and with it came an opportunity to move forward. After breakfast, Alex gathered all the documents, forms, and notes collected over the past 2 days and set to work organizing a plan to comply with the Homeowners Association's guidelines. The cabin, though rustic, was full of potential. Alex made a checklist of every task needed to start renovations legally. Some items were straightforward. Submit a permit request for exterior painting, outline plans for window replacements, provide measurements for structural work. Others were more complex, specifying materials to be used, submitting sketches of landscape changes, and detailing the timing of construction to minimize disturbance to neighbors. Every box ticked brought a sense of accomplishment. Every step forward a feeling of control in a situation that had initially felt confusing and restrictive. By mid-morning, Alex had drafted the first batch of requests. They carefully scanned each page, double-checking measurements, clarifying vague descriptions, and attaching references to HOA guidelines to show compliance. Precision and clarity became the focus. Alex knew that one missing detail could result in delays. Once satisfied, they prepared to submit the paperwork digitally, sending it directly to the HOA office with a courteous cover letter explaining intentions and ownership. No sooner had Alex hit send than the rumble of tires on gravel caught their attention. A vehicle slowly drove down the driveway, a dark SUV with the familiar HOA emblem on the side. Alex's heart sank. Though they were complying with the rules, the presence of the security team was an unwelcome reminder that the conflict was far from over. The SUV came to a halt near the cabin. 2 officers stepped out, moving with a practiced, measured pace. Alex stood on the porch, holding the forms, ready to answer any questions. The officers approached but maintained a professional distance. "Good morning," one officer said. "We noticed activity on the property. Can you clarify what you're doing?" Alex kept their tone calm and precise. "I am organizing my plans for renovations and have just submitted the required forms for review. No work has begun yet. I'm here to ensure full compliance with the association's guidelines." The officer glanced at the forms in Alex's hand. "Very well," he said, nodding slightly. "Please make sure no actual work begins until approval is received. Thank you for your cooperation." As the officers returned to their vehicle and drove away, Alex exhaled a long breath. The tension in their shoulders eased slightly, but a nagging worry remained. Every interaction with the HOA reminded Alex that the path forward would require patience, careful documentation, and unwavering focus. Determined to maintain momentum, Alex returned to the cabin interior and began organizing materials for the renovation once approval arrived. Sketches of paint colors, floor plans, and furniture arrangements covered the kitchen table. Every decision was deliberate, every detail considered. It was not just about following rules. It was about preparing for success while respecting the community structure. That evening, as Alex sat on the porch and watched the sun dip behind the trees, they reflected on the day. The process was slow and at times frustrating, but they felt a sense of progress. By submitting the forms and clarifying intentions, they had taken control of the situation rather than letting fear or confusion dominate. They realized that knowledge, preparation, and communication were their most powerful tools. A soft breeze rustled the leaves along the shore, carrying the scent of fresh water and pine. Alex smiled faintly, thinking about the cabin's potential. Though the HOA had made the first encounter uncomfortable, the rules themselves were not insurmountable. With diligence, patience, and careful planning, there was a clear path to turning the cabin into the retreat they had imagined. Before night fully settled over the lake, Alex made one final note in the notebook. Track all interactions, retain copies of all submissions, document everything carefully. This simple act felt empowering. It was more than bureaucracy. It was a way to ensure that no misunderstanding could hinder progress. As darkness fell, the cabin seemed to settle into a quiet rhythm. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, waves lapping gently against the shore. Alex sat back in the wooden chair on the porch, allowing themselves a moment of calm. The day had been long and challenging, but it had also been productive. The first steps toward reclaiming the dream were taken, and for the first time, the cabin felt not just like a project, but like home in the making. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Alex felt ready. They had learned that patience, clarity, and determination could navigate even unexpected obstacles. The lake reflected the last streaks of sunlight, peaceful and unwavering, a reminder that the reward at the end of the journey was worth every careful step. A few days after submitting the renovation forms, Alex felt a growing unease. The lake remained calm, the breeze soft and refreshing, but the tranquility of the cabin seemed to be overshadowed by anticipation. Every rustle in the trees, every distant vehicle, made Alex glance toward the driveway. The process that had started as a hopeful plan now carried a tension that was impossible to ignore. It was late morning when the first official letter arrived, slid neatly under the front door of the cabin. Alex picked it up with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The envelope bore the HOA's emblem, crisp and official. Opening it carefully, Alex read through the contents. The letter outlined specific limitations on exterior work, clarified certain restrictions that had not been previously mentioned, and emphasized that no renovations could begin until all approvals were formally granted. Alex leaned against the doorframe, exhaling slowly. The tone of the letter was polite yet firm, leaving no room for interpretation. It was not a threat, but it was a clear reminder that the association's authority was procedural and binding. Alex's initial frustration mingled with a growing resolve. They had anticipated some bureaucracy, but the layered rules were more intricate than expected. Determined to move forward without confrontation, Alex reviewed the letter carefully and compared it to their submitted forms. They began adjusting their plans, adding more detailed diagrams, specifying materials, and clarifying timelines. Every amendment was made thoughtfully, anticipating potential questions from the HOA. Alex was committed to showing respect for the process while firmly asserting their ownership and intentions. But that afternoon, another sign of tension arrived. The familiar dark SUV appeared slowly along the gravel driveway. Alex's heart sank. Two officers stepped out, moving with a steady but deliberate pace. Their approach was calm, almost routine, yet every step reminded Alex that their plans were under constant observation. "Good afternoon," one officer said. "We noticed some movement around the property and wanted to ensure compliance with the association's guidelines. Can you clarify your activities?" Alex held the amended forms in one hand and gestured to the cabin. "I am reviewing and refining my renovation plans based on the guidelines you provided. No construction or work has begun. Everything is documented and submitted for approval." The officer scanned the forms, giving a slight nod. "We understand. Please ensure that no materials are delivered and no work starts until all approvals are complete." Alex's jaw tightened slightly, but they maintained a calm tone. "Understood. I am committed to following the process." The officers returned to the vehicle and drove away, leaving Alex standing in the late afternoon sun, notebook in hand. The tension was palpable. Every step forward seemed to come with scrutiny, every action measured and observed. The cabin that had once felt like a haven now carried the weight of rules and procedures that seemed almost personal in their persistence. Determined not to be discouraged, Alex turned their attention back to preparation. They reorganized tools, sketched out interior layouts, and planned garden renovations that could only begin after approval. Every detail was carefully documented, photographed, and noted, creating a comprehensive record that could answer any potential questions from the HOA. Neighbors passed by, some offering friendly waves, others observing cautiously. A few who had experienced similar interactions with the association shared advice discreetly. Patience, thorough documentation, and courteous communication were key. Alex absorbed every suggestion, building a strategy not just to comply, but to protect their rights as a property owner. By evening, Alex stepped onto the porch, the sun dipping behind the lake and painting the sky in shades of gold and lavender. The water glimmered gently, waves lapping softly against the shore. The tension of the day seemed to fade slightly in the beauty of the moment. Alex took a deep breath, letting the calm of the lake balance the stress of the situation. Despite the challenges, Alex felt a growing sense of determination. The cabin was theirs, and they were prepared to navigate the rules, face scrutiny, and assert their right to enjoy and renovate the property. The confrontation was not yet over, but each careful step brought them closer to the goal. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Alex closed their notebook and looked out over the water. The journey had become more complicated than expected, but it was far from hopeless. They would remain diligent, respectful, and strategic, ready for any obstacle the association might present. The cabin by the lake, serene and promising, was worth every careful step. The days that followed were a mix of careful planning and quiet tension. Alex knew that navigating the homeowners association's rules required more than patience. It required preparation, strategy, and support. Sitting at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the dusty windows, Alex began to make calls. First, they contacted a property attorney, explaining the situation and providing all the documents, letters, and submissions. The attorney listened carefully, nodding thoughtfully as Alex outlined the timeline of events. "From what you've described," the attorney said, "you are well within your rights as the owner. The association may have procedures, but they cannot prevent you from accessing your property. Document everything, follow the rules where required, and keep communication professional. If they escalate, you have a strong case." Alex felt a surge of relief. Legal guidance provided reassurance that their efforts were not in vain. It also offered a clearer path forward, a framework for asserting their rights without confrontation. With the attorney's advice, Alex began organizing every interaction, every document, and every form submitted. Each piece of paper became part of a growing record of diligence and compliance. Next, Alex reached out to neighbors. They had met a few in passing, the older couple who had shared advice earlier and another family who tended a small garden along the lake's edge. Over cups of tea and casual conversation, Alex discovered that several residents had quietly faced similar challenges with the association. Some had been required to submit multiple rounds of paperwork before minor renovations. Others had experienced security visits that, while polite, felt intimidating. Encouraged by this, Alex began building a small network of allies. These neighbors, who understood the nuances of community rules, offered advice and support. One neighbor, a retired engineer named, volunteered to review the renovation plans and suggest clarifications to avoid unnecessary objections. Another, a local contractor familiar with the HOA's procedures, provided guidance on how to submit work proposals effectively. With each conversation, Alex felt less isolated. The challenge was no longer just theirs. It was a shared experience among residents who valued their homes and sought fairness. Armed with support, Alex turned back to the cabin with renewed energy. They organized a binder containing every form, every email, and every note from conversations with the HOA. Each page was carefully labeled and cross-referenced. Photographs of the property, both interior and exterior, were included to document its condition prior to any work. Alex even created a timeline, noting every date of submission, delivery, and interaction. The meticulous preparation provided a sense of control in an otherwise stressful situation. Despite the ongoing scrutiny from the HOA, Alex found moments of calm. Early mornings on the porch became a ritual, observing the lake as sunlight shimmered across the water. They sketched out design ideas, imagining the final result: a refreshed cabin with a cozy interior, a welcoming porch, and a garden that blended seamlessly with the natural surroundings. These moments reminded Alex why they had embarked on this journey in the first place. Word of Alex's careful planning and respectful approach spread quietly through the neighborhood. Residents who had once been hesitant to speak up began offering support more openly. They shared tips on navigating approvals, encouraged Alex to maintain documentation, and even offered to accompany them during future interactions with the HOA. Slowly, a small community of allies emerged, united by a shared interest in fairness and clarity within the neighborhood. By the end of the week, Alex felt stronger, more prepared, and surprisingly empowered. What had begun as a frustrating and intimidating experience had transformed into a strategic effort backed by professional advice and community support. Each step taken was deliberate, each action part of a plan that respected both the rules and their own rights as a property owner. As the sun set behind the lake, casting long shadows across the cabin's weathered exterior, Alex sat on the porch with the notebook open once more. The water shimmered like liquid gold, a reminder that the dream of a serene retreat was still within reach. With allies at their side, clear documentation, and legal guidance, Alex knew the next step would require courage and careful execution. But they were ready. The cabin was theirs, and this time they would face the next challenge with confidence. The day had arrived. Alex could feel the weight of anticipation in the air as the sun rose over the lake, casting golden streaks across the calm water. Today was not just another step in the renovation process. It was the day they would confront the homeowners association with clarity, preparation, and support. After a week of careful planning, gathering allies, and documenting every detail, Alex felt ready. The cabin that had once seemed vulnerable to scrutiny now stood as a symbol of persistence and determination. Early in the morning, Alex reviewed the binder containing every document, every submission, and every photograph. They had highlighted sections of the HOA guidelines to show compliance and organized a detailed timeline of events from the day they first arrived at the cabin. Every interaction with security, every letter, every note from neighbors was cataloged meticulously. Alongside the paperwork, a few neighbors had agreed to be present for support, ready to testify about their experiences and to show solidarity. By mid-morning, the familiar dark SUV appeared slowly down the driveway. This time, Alex did not feel anxiety but focus. The vehicle parked near the cabin, and the two officers stepped out, their expressions neutral but watchful. Alex greeted them with a firm but polite voice. "Good morning," Alex began, holding the binder firmly. "I've organized all required documents, including renovation plans, ownership proof, and detailed compliance notes. I'd like to go over these with you today to ensure everything meets the community guidelines." The officers exchanged a glance before nodding. "Very well," one said. "We'll review your submissions." Alex opened the binder, carefully presenting each document. Every page was annotated, each plan cross-referenced with HOA rules. Photographs showed the cabin's current condition, demonstrating that no unauthorized work had taken place. They explained each step of the renovation process, showing attention to detail and willingness to comply. At a subtle signal, neighbors stepped forward to show support. The retired engineer spoke clearly and calmly, explaining how Alex's plans were thorough, thoughtful, and consistent with HOA standards. Another neighbor, a contractor familiar with local procedures, confirmed that the proposed renovations were appropriate and would not violate any guidelines. Their presence was quiet but powerful, demonstrating that Alex was not acting in isolation, but as a responsible member of the community. The officers flipped through the documents, occasionally jotting notes on their clipboards. Alex maintained steady eye contact, calm and composed, answering questions with patience. It was not a confrontation of hostility, but one of professionalism and clarity, a demonstration that preparation and transparency could resolve tension. After reviewing the binder thoroughly, one officer spoke. "It appears that you have submitted everything required and have documented your plans comprehensively. The HOA will proceed with approval based on these submissions. While further inspections may be necessary, there is no reason to prevent access to your property for preparatory work that does not violate the guidelines." Alex felt a rush of relief. Months of planning, documentation, and careful communication were paying off. They had successfully asserted their rights while demonstrating respect for the community rules. The officers gathered their materials, nodded politely, and returned to their vehicle, leaving Alex standing on the porch, victorious but composed. Neighbors lingered briefly, offering smiles and quiet congratulations. Alex thanked them, acknowledging that their presence had been invaluable. Without support and careful preparation, today might have been far more stressful. Together, they had turned what seemed like a daunting challenge into a demonstration of fairness and responsibility. As the SUV disappeared down the driveway, Alex looked out at the lake. The water shimmered, the gentle waves reflecting the afternoon sun. The cabin, once a source of anxiety, now felt like a sanctuary reclaimed. Every detail of the planning, every note, every conversation had contributed to this moment. Sitting on the porch with the notebook in hand, Alex allowed themselves a quiet smile. The confrontation had been resolved not with anger, but with preparation, patience, and clarity. The path forward was now open, the cabin ready for renovations, and the dream of a peaceful retreat fully within reach. For the first time in days, Alex felt unburdened. The lake remained calm, the breeze soft and steady, and the cabin, weathered but resilient, awaited the transformation it had long deserved. It was a moment of victory, quiet but profound, a reminder that persistence, knowledge, and careful preparation could overcome even the most unexpected obstacles. With the Homeowners Association's concerns addressed and access to the cabin officially secured, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. The air smelled fresher, the lake glimmered more invitingly, and the gentle breeze seemed to carry a quiet promise of new beginnings. The struggle had been long, filled with paperwork, research, and tense interactions, but now the path was clear. The cabin was theirs to enjoy and transform. The first step was organizing the renovation materials. Alex had spent the past weeks planning every detail, from paint colors to flooring, ensuring everything with the community's guidelines. Today, boxes of supplies arrived, quietly unloaded onto the porch. Alex checked each item, confirming measurements, materials, and instructions. It was not just a matter of preparation. It was the first tangible step in bringing the dream of the cabin to life. Alex began with the interior. The floors, aged and creaky, were sanded and refinished, revealing rich wooden tones that had been hidden beneath years of wear. Walls were painted in soft, neutral colors, balancing warmth and light. Every choice reflected both practicality and aesthetic vision. For Alex, this was more than renovation. It was a transformation of space into a home, a personal retreat from the pressures of everyday life. Outside, the garden received attention. Overgrown plants were pruned, new flowers planted along the edges, and a small vegetable patch took shape. Alex moved with care, mindful of the surroundings, yet energized by the visible progress. Each change was a step toward reclaiming the serenity and beauty they had envisioned when first arriving at the cabin. Neighbors who had offered support in earlier weeks stopped by occasionally, providing tips, lending tools, or simply offering words of encouragement. These interactions, previously tinged with caution, now felt warm and collaborative. Alex realized that the community, when approached respectfully and with preparation, could be a source of assistance and friendship rather than tension. The lake, once a backdrop to anxiety, now seemed to shimmer with possibility. Evenings became Alex's favorite part of the day. Sitting on the porch, notebook and coffee in hand, they would watch the sun sink behind the distant trees, painting the lake in shades of pink and gold. The gentle lapping of water against the shore provided a rhythmic calm, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of challenges they had faced. Each evening was a reminder that patience and persistence had led to this moment, peace and ownership restored. The transformation of the cabin also brought a personal sense of accomplishment. Alex reflected on the journey, the initial excitement, the unexpected confrontations, the research, documentation, and alliance building. Every obstacle had demanded patience, careful thought, and resilience. Now, as the cabin evolved into a comfortable and welcoming retreat, Alex understood that the struggle had deepened their connection to the property and strengthened their confidence in navigating challenges. Friends and family visited over the following weeks, marveling at the changes. They admired the restored woodwork, the blooming garden, and the thoughtful layout that balanced comfort and functionality. Alex guided them through each corner of the cabin, sharing stories of the challenges overcome, the encounters with the Homeowners Association, and the planning that had made it all possible. The narrative of perseverance became as much a part of the cabin as the physical renovations themselves. By the end of the first full month, the cabin was unrecognizable from the day Alex had arrived. The interior was cozy and bright, the garden vibrant and orderly, and the porch a perfect vantage point to watch the lake's calm waters. Alex finally allowed themselves to fully relax, taking a quiet morning to sit on the steps with a cup of coffee, listening to the gentle symphony of water, wind, and wildlife. In that moment, Alex felt a deep satisfaction. The cabin had been reclaimed not just as a property, but as a personal sanctuary. The struggles had been real, the tension significant, but the victory was equally profound. Alex's vision had come to life through careful planning, resilience, and the support of neighbors and advisors. As the sun rose higher, reflecting brilliantly on the water, Alex smiled, knowing that the journey was worth every challenge faced. The cabin by the lake was no longer just a dream. It was a tangible reality, a place of peace, beauty, and accomplishment. And in that quiet, golden morning light, Alex felt an enduring sense of triumph, ready to enjoy every moment of their hard-earned retreat. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.